Hi everyone. I'm very excited to welcome Abhimanyu today in the TrueML Talks. He's the head of machine learning at LevelAI. And Abhimanyu, over to you. Would love to know a little bit about yourself and then about LevelAI also, and what is the what is the motivation behind LevelAI? How is it changing the customer success industry and things like that?
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much, Abhishek, for having me here. Hi, everyone. I'm Abhimanyu. I drive the machine learning team at LevelAI. LevelAI is basically what we call a conversational intelligence company. So we ingest conversational data from contact centers of our clients, and then we use machine learning techniques to come up with a bunch of insights. And basically, our mission is to enable these contact centers to basically delight customers in each interaction, and that's what these insights are geared towards. Yeah.
I see. Quite interesting. And Abhimanyu, would love to hear about you. I think you have been in the ML domain for a long time. You founded companies in AI, and you've worked in companies like Nomura, BlackRock, SoundHound, and would love to understand like your journey in ML and AI and how it has changed over the years.
Sure. Yeah. So my journey in ML has been a bit indirect in the sense that I originally studied computer science back in my undergrad days, but then through a series of events, I just ended up in finance. So I did work in the finance industry for almost a decade, which is where basically Nomura is an investment bank, BlackRock is an asset manager. So that's where I worked. But because of my background, I was looking at what was happening in the machine learning world. So I was also looking at news which was coming out around 2016. So although it happened in 2012, ImageNet came to my notice in 2016, and so it
Okay.
just piqued my interest. And I was thinking about whether I was just mulling the question whether it's not too late to jump back into the tech world. And I spoke with a few mentors, and then I basically pursued a master's degree studying machine learning in the States. Uh, just followed through my interest, and then after that, I tried to start a company. I wouldn't say I founded a company. I created something called QuickFin.ai. So because of my finance background, I was aware of the type of data which is there, which is structured in the form of tables, which can be stored in a database, then unstructured, which is like SEC filings. You have a lot of text, numbers
Right.
interspersed. And so I wanted to create a natural language interface to interact with this data. And so this was back in 2020, and I ended up creating QuickFin.ai. It featured on Product Hunt. It was essentially an English language interface where you could query structured and unstructured data. But then I realized that my interest lies in the tech side of things, not in making a business really. Uh, I wasn't that
Okay.
interested. So then I was looking for opportunities, and I found something in SoundHound, which is a great company in the voice AI space. And then folks from LevelAi approached me with an exciting opportunity. That's how I jumped. Long story short, yeah, that's how I ended up at LevelAi 2 years back. Yeah.
Nice. That's quite interesting. Uh, would love to understand Abhimanyu a bit around as the head of ML at Level AI. Like, what are some key initiatives that you're currently working on to enhance customer intelligence, especially the application of Gen AI?
Sure, sure. Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, we ingest conversational data, and then we try to produce insights out of that data. And these insights are basically, each conversation has multiple attributes, and we are looking to extract these attributes. Now, these attributes could be really simple, like did the uh, did the agent use the company name while greeting the customer in a call? Say, hello,
I
welcome
see.
to LevelAI. Did I say LevelAI or not? So that's pretty straightforward. Or it could be something complex, like did the agent proactively try to prevent the customer from churning away? So that's a complex query, and
Right.
it requires basically reasoning across the conversation, so connecting the dots from the first line to the last line of the conversation to answer this query. And that's where basically we use Gen AI. So we formulate this as a generative problem. So we have a transformer based architecture, some architecture which which basically learns to take a conversation and then condition on that conversation, produce this attribute. And
I see.
yeah, so that's how we are using generative AI. As of today, I mean, almost every feature which we service uses generative AI. So even tasks which you would usually do more or less discriminative tasks, like entity extraction, we are using generative approaches just because the starting point, the pre-trained models which are out there, they've been trained on a
Yes.
lot more data and a lot more tasks already. So yeah.
Right. So these attributes that you mentioned, Abhimanyu, like you let your customers define these attributes in English language, and then you are able to extract them. Is it more like that?
Yeah, so yeah, you bring up a very important point. So one of our aims is to make these systems configurable because each business is quite different and they have their
Right.
own set of attributes, as you pointed out. So yes, we do let them define these themselves.
I see. Okay.
We, we,
And
we, like we do have off-the-shelf offerings for stuff which is common across everything. For example, if you want to redact PII, personal information, then it's the
hmm,
same for everybody, name, email address, etc. But to a large extent, our customers have bespoke requests. So
I see. Okay. And in this, Abhimanyu, like, are you mostly using something like prompt engineering to do this? And what kind of models have you decided, or what kind of models have worked out really well for you? Like, are you using ChatGPT, open source models?
uh, so yes, ultimately it comes down to prompt engineering only. Wherever we are using LLMs in our features, and it's most of
Hmm.
the features, but not all of them. It comes down to prompt engineering. How do you basically you we allow the customer to craft a prompt themselves to say, and they can see results, and then that's how we do it. Uh, we don't use Chat GPT. We don't use basically any third party or API. So nothing from OpenAI or Claude. We train our own generative models. Yeah,
Oh, nice. Uh,
yeah.
are you training these models from like scratch, or are you like fine tuning some of the open source models? What have you seen in the quality comparison? I'm guessing when you started out with ChatGPT and then you moved or you evolved from there. Like, how did that process work?
Yeah, so LevelAi is almost 5 years old, so it predates ChatGPT or any of these APIs. So Level has been using LLMs for quite a long while now, and
I see.
yes, so as you correctly pointed out, our approach is we don't train LLMs in the sense that we don't train any model on the next word prediction task because there are already
Hmm.
very powerful models out there. There's a lot of options today. Uh, to name a few, basically Llama, Mistral, etc., etc.
Yes.
So we would start from a pre-trained checkpoint as of some size, and then we'll have a proprietary data set on which we'll tune these models.
Oh, interesting. So you're basically fine tuning these open source models and then getting the models out, basically, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So, Arvind, like you end up having like models per customer, right? In this case, like different models, like one model per customer, like because it's the customer data, or uh, so the point I'm trying to get to is like, do you have to host models on a per customer basis, or is it like one model serving different customers? How does that work out?
Uh, it really depends on the contractual terms. I can't get into the specifics of that, but yeah, it really depends on the contractual term. Yeah.
I see. Okay. Yeah. So, like, I wanted to get into more into like the infrastructure challenges if you have faced any. Like, we have a few customers that basically have to train a model per customer, and then what happens is like each of these models takes up runs on a GPU, and then they end up like if you are each of these model will incur you on a GPU machine $1,000 $2,000 a month, right? So if they have to run a model per customer, it ends up being quite expensive. Just wondering if you ran into that problem or that problem never manifested for you.
Not really. Again, it really depends on the contract. If the customer wants an isolated model, we can do that. But
Okay.
we haven't run into this challenge yet.
Understood. Okay, cool. That sounds great. And in this, I'm guessing in the customer success part, like Abhimanyu, you also have to answer questions based on the corpus of the knowledge base of the customer or things like that. Like, have you gone into encounter problems like that, or do you try to solve those problems?
Yeah. So two of our offerings, I think you'll see on our website. One is called Agent Assist, and the other is
Yes.
Agent GPT. So both of them are geared towards addressing this problem only. Uh, as of today, our product it's basically really meant to empower agents than to replace them. And Agent
Hmm.
Assist is a product which in real time can parse a customer's query and then assist the agent with whatever the best resource is available within their knowledge base to help answer a question or to respond to customers in a particular way. Yeah. So Agent Assist is one such product. Then Agent GPT is another such offering. What it adds on top of Agent Assist is Agent Assist basically works off a knowledge base, which we indexed in some way and which we can retrieve when a customer asks something. But Agent GPT, we use that to actually auto curate a data set out of past conversations. And uh, the thing is that knowledge bases are again limited in size because they've been crafted manually, and so there's only so much nuanced questions you can add to a knowledge base. But if you have a trove of past data, then there are a lot of nuanced questions which customers ask, and the agents find answers to those in real time, and then all of this information is recorded in the conversation. And now it's up to us to basically retrieve that information and index it, and then retrieve it again for future use. So that's what Agent GPT does.
Understood. So, actually, now that you tell that, I'm very curious. Do you treat the previous conversations as a corpus of the full data, like just goes into indexing, or do you do something like match this current question and see if there is a previous similar question using some semantic matches if a similar question has been asked and then try to fetch the answer correspondingly? Like, just curious if you have tried both the approaches or any other approach and which one has worked better.
Uh, Not sure I got the first approach correct, but what you said in the second approach, it's basically you basically described a retrieval pipeline where, given the current conversation so far,
Yeah.
we'll try to look for a solution in the past conversational data.
Okay.
So that's what we do. We pre-index the past conversational data. It's not indexed as raw conversations.
Hmm.
We do a lot of pre-processing to basically turn it into a form which can be readily used by an agent.
Understood.
And then we design basically we have to design the index ourselves, so we have to design what the keys in this index would look like, against which we'll match the current conversation which is happening. So
Okay.
yeah.
So you have your own custom attributes and kind of things on which you try to
Yeah.
match. Is it are you doing more like using embeddings or things like that? I'm guessing some sort of RAG pipeline is there
Yes,
internally.
you're right. So embeddings are definitely a part of
Yeah.
most I guess RAG pipelines today, but there's a couple of more steps to that. You can you're already familiar with this. So if you use embeddings as a first step of a retrieval, then you may have a re-ranker, then you may have some keyword filters, etc., etc. So
Okay, interesting. And even the embedding models and everything that you're using is all open source. You don't go for any APIs for embedding or anything like that.
no, no, we don't use any APIs in production.
Nice, awesome. Uh, Wanted to hear, Abhimanyu, like it seems like you have done a lot of extensive development in the Gen AI. Like, any challenges you encountered? What was the hardest part uh, in this process, or just some interesting anecdotes you can remember while building this thing?
Well, with Gen AI, some of the hard parts are basically, I would say, they start right from data curation. How much data do we need? How do we curate data? How do we? So we have a corpus of a large number of conversations, let's say millions of conversations, but we can't
Hmm.
train. We don't train on all of those. So how do we select the conversations we want to train on? So we have some heuristics and techniques to do this data selection, which we'll then annotate and then train our models. To be honest, training these days has become the easier part of these pipelines. So it's
Hmm.
pretty gutter. There are a limited number of checkpoints, limited techniques. Then the next harder part is actually evaluation. How do you evaluate a Gen AI model? Uh, let's say there's a Q&A model where basically uh, our users want to answer a question about a particular agent behavior. My model can produce some text, but what is a good metric to say if that text is correct or not? Can I just use the usual metrics we used to do for summaries, for example, let's say root score, which basically measures n-gram overlap.
Hmm.
But these sort of metrics generally overlook correctness of the response. Correctness generally hinges on one or two keywords. If a yes becomes a no, the root score doesn't change, but the whole response may change. So that's a hard challenge which we are still figuring out. We try to come up with our own metrics. Uh, in addition to these numerical metrics, we almost for every feature we also have annotators like real humans evaluate these on qualitative certain qualitative metrics which we define for each task. So yeah, these are some of the challenges. Yeah.
Interesting. And like evaluation today, like you have your own custom metrics, or is it mostly manual, like you eyeball or annotate, and that's
So as a
uh,
first cut, we'll use whatever we can do programmatically. So we will actually calculate Rouge score, for example. We'll
hmm,
calculate a bird score, which at least measures has some sense of semantic similarity between the ground truth and the prediction. But then we also have our annotation team who basically picks a sample of predictions, and then we define metrics on which they have to mark. These metrics would be something like whether the response is coherent, it's complete. It could be I mean, it could be coherent but not complete. So these sort of things are what we're looking for.
understood. Interesting. And mm, Abhimanyu, will you have context on the infrastructure side of things, like how the models are deployed, trained on GPUs, and things like that? Like, if you have context, maybe you can shed some light or.
Yeah, I can give you a high level picture. So basically,
Hmm.
given the scale of models we are talking about these days, we do distributed training on our own cluster. So we have a cluster of GPUs, and then
Is
serving
this
is
an
basically
on-prem? Is this an on-prem cluster, or you use cloud infrastructure?
sure. So it's hosted in a third party data center, but
Okay.
we own the infrastructure. Yeah.
Okay.
Uh, so that and then we will use some distributed training technique like FSDP to train a large model, and then deployment is basically we have containerized deployment, and it basically auto scales depending on the traffic. So yeah, that's at a high level. Then for some of these things like transformer based models, there's a lot of innovation going on which is just focused towards making transformer throughput higher. For example, there are things like paged attention these days,
Hmm.
which are available in the form of open source packages again like VLLM. So we'll definitely be using these wherever we can.
Understood. And is serving also on the your own infrastructure, or you use cloud for that?
Uh, it's a mix.
It's a mix. Okay, interesting. And has cost ever become a concern? Like a lot of our people who work on GenAI, like they start worrying about cost, like especially the GPU cost and all. Has that yet become a concern for you, or you don't have, you haven't faced any issues there?
Uh, the thing is, when you own some infrastructure, then yeah, I mean, we one may like we may tend to be a bit negligent, but the thing is that we put in a lot of work before actually starting any training run. So a lot of work goes in experiment design, and
Hmm.
there's a lot of deliberation, and only then will we actually start a training run. So training run is like it's now become the easier part, and yeah, the last part basically. But
Understood. And for tracking this training runs, Abhimanyu, like, do you use anything today, like to track this training run? How is the training going? The metrics during the training?
we haven't we've used some tools on and off. I don't want to name them, but mostly it's basically our logs only. We log whatever we can for every training run, and it's just the logs basically.
Understood. Okay. For people, like a lot of people are starting with GenAI now and building the similar kind of like RAG systems or fine tuning their models and things like that. Do you have any advice for people starting out with these things, like some pitfalls to not to be careful about to make their progress faster?
The first thing is focus on your data. Basically, have a very good handle on what your data mix looks like. What is the quality of your annotations? All of that really matters a lot. I mean, basically, otherwise it'll be garbage in, garbage out. So your model won't really learn what you're looking to teach it.
Hmm.
Then the second thing is before jumping on to like really large models, probably you want to do some ablation studies with smaller checkpoints that can give you a good sense of yeah.
Okay.
So that's what I would say. Spend a lot of time on your data curation and then ablation studies using smaller checkpoints so that you don't incur a lot of cost beforehand.
Understood. And like a lot of people who are starting with Gen AI today are confused. Like they start with Chat GPT, and it seems to be good enough for a lot of the cases, and they are confused whether we should go for open source or whether we should fine tune their own models. Like, was there ever a point where you had to compare what Chat GPT is giving, especially like for example sentiment? I think you do sentiment detection and all, right? So was there a case where you compared ChatGPT versus your own model and you did a comparison and you found like yours is doing better or worse or whatever? Did you have to go through that cycle for a lot of the use cases?
Yeah, I mean, like if this were an unconstrained problem, cost was not a concern, latency was not a concern. GPT-4 is a remarkable model. Uh, I mean, given the size and the label data that has gone behind GPT-4, GPT-4 does tremendously well at any task that I can think of. But
Hmm.
again, as a business, we have constraints. We have a lot of traffic. We want to serve it efficiently at the lowest cost possible without compromising on performance and attain a good latency. So all of that means that we'll definitely try to see if smaller models can match up to at least GPT-4's outputs uh, on a set of narrow tasks that we are interested in. Like we are not interested in a model which can write SOPs for grad admissions. We are interested in a model which can do really well on contact center tasks, which is what matters to our clients. So yeah, I mean, I would say maybe a good strategy would be to bootstrap using GPT outputs or any third-party API, not just GPT, and see if you're actually getting business traction, and then maybe you can think about yeah, moving to a smaller model.
That's great advice, Abhimanyu. I think yeah, most people realize like it's usually a lot of investment to like spin up and test the open source model, especially the infrastructure side. Uh, so yeah, great advice on that. And I wonder, like, have you started using agents? Like usually with the progression we have seen with companies is uh, the first is prompt engineering, then RAG comes in, then maybe sometimes fine tuning comes in, and then maybe they go towards agents. Have have you started working with agents? What's your experience been like? What do you think? When should people use agents?
Uh, so again, I think as somebody on Twitter put it, agent seems like a new terminology for an API, basically. Uh,
Hmm.
it's an endpoint. So to us, at least so far, it hasn't felt like a new development. It's basically instead of using a single call API, maybe you have a multi-step process where each step is involves an API call, which we call an agent, basically. So yeah, so I would say, I mean, it does not feel like anything new to me. Basically, uh, yes, we do have we do have pipelines where we'll be making API calls to three different LLMs to accomplish one task. Uh,
Hmm.
if you want to call it agent, that's also fine. But yeah, ultimately, I would say whatever your task is and whatever it takes. If it takes two API calls to two LLMs, do it. Uh, yeah.
Understood. And any like among the libraries you have tried out, like LangChain, Llama Index, things like that, like anything you found to be working out better in the open source land, uh, like some things that people should like those are really good and people should definitely take a look at that.
Yeah, sure. So So I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of these libraries are built to basically leverage open source, not open source, third-party APIs like GPT-4.
Yes.
Um, we since we don't use these third-party APIs, so we haven't really uh, delved into Llama Index or LangChain. We basically have shied away from this level of abstraction. We feel that PyTorch already is a good level of abstraction. Then we have the Transformers library. It offers a really good level of abstraction. So we haven't felt the need to go beyond this. We do have rack pipelines running in production, which we are able to just craft ourselves without resorting to another library.
Okay, interesting. And
But
vector D, and while using a vector DB, I'm guessing you must be using a vector DB somewhere in your rack pipeline, uh,
yeah.
right? While using a vector DB, did you face like there are a lot of vector DBs out there today? Did you do some benchmarking, or did you find one works better than the other for some use cases, or any insights? around that?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll be honest. I haven't benchmarked one vector DB against another yet. We've been using a vector DB, an open source vector DB, for a long time. We just played around with it, and we evaluate our task, which uses these vector DBs, and basically by evaluation I mean we measure recall precision metrics like this. Uh,
Okay,
I haven't really done a benchmarking of different vector DBs.
understood. Okay, and one more thing was around. Abhimanyu, like, would love to know a little bit around your stack for deploying this models, fine tuning, and monitoring, especially the production side of things. Like, uh, do you monitor like this request to LLMs, the latency? Uh, like, what do you use, or like, just wanted to hear around that. Like,
It is pretty straightforward. We use Datadog as our primary monitoring tool for all our ML services.
hmm.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
that's
and
pretty much.
you watch all the latency and everything you basically record there. You
Hmm.
check it there. Interesting. Uh, do you for this deployment of model serving and all? Do you happen to use Kubernetes by any chance?
Yeah, so our deployment is containerized. So yes.
Okay, interesting. Uh, cool. And would love to hear this. So you mentioned you have two things, right? The agent GPT and the QA GPT. It's the same thing, right? The agent assist is the QA GPT. Is that what it is?
Sure. So let me describe what we mean by QA basically. So every contact center, one of their key tasks is quality assurance. They want to measure how well they are servicing their customer calls, and towards that end, for each conversation, they would usually have a rubric of questions, which basically
Okay.
helps them determine how well the call went. And this would be as simple as was the agent proactive in solving customers' problems? Was a resolution actually achieved in the call or not?
Hmm.
So, as you can imagine, this kind of a problem is solvable. Uh, I mean, we can formulate this as a generative problem where, conditioned on the question and a conversation, you basically produce a response.
Hmm.
That's what the GPT product is, uh, basically. So QA stands for quality assurance.
Okay. And but generating this explainability and the reason sounds like a pretty hard problem for which you will need a big model. I mean, at least intuitively, that's what I think. Like GPT-4 and all will do a good job. So, were you able to manage? Uh, did you manage to get a good answer even with like a much more smaller parameter model by training it, or uh,
Yes. So again, it's so basically performance. Definitely scale is a big factor here, and we are operating at much smaller scales than GPT-4 because of cost constraints and all of that. But again, training data is also a big factor in performance, and we have access to proprietary data because we have access to conversations. We are able to annotate them from our experience. We know what we need to annotate. So all of that basically leads us to achieving good performance on these QAGPT questions as well.
I see. Uh, Based on your experience, Abhimanyu, like, would you say that if you had access to GPT-4, let's say like there's no constraint of cost or privacy or anything like that, uh, would GPT-4 give you the same quality of answers without doing that annotation and all that you're getting, or after that annotating and training, you are getting better than what GPT-4 would have given you?
That's a great question, and the honest answer is that for the parts of our pipeline, and again, I'll talk about the pipeline part where we are
Hmm.
using an LLM. GPT GPT-4 is a tremendous model. I think it will give you the answer you want. Amongst all the open source fine tuned models, third party APIs I've seen out there, GPT-4 is just remarkable. Having said that, we are not just selling the output of the LLM itself.
Right.
So I described one part of our pipeline where we extract attributes from a conversation, but that's
Hmm.
not the end of it. There are several layers in the stack. So you have attributes for each conversation, but there are a million conversations. So a human being cannot actually parse these 1 million attributes in one go, right? It's not humanly possible. So you need an aggregation scheme. Basically, then this means that in your pipeline somewhere you'll have some clustering scheme, and you'll have to design that clustering scheme which will aggregate these attributes from 1 million conversations and then present them in some hierarchy which actually makes sense to a human being. So
Hmm.
even though GPT-4 can replace an LLM, with good prompt engineering, you can beat any LLM, I think, using GPT-4. But it will still only be a part of the whole pipeline. So you'll still need all these components of aggregation, pre-processing, post-processing, etc. And then on top of that, you will actually need business knowledge. Basically you will need to come up with what is important to your customer, and that's something which you need some experience to figure out in the industry, basically.
Interesting. Uh, how do you think, Abhimanyu, like the future of this looks like? The customer success industry, like maybe like 5 years from now, like what do you think? Like I'm guessing, even as a journey in the level AI, like the experience that it was there like 2 3 years back and the experience that is now, uh, I'm guessing there is a huge difference in the way things are working. And so, just want to hear your opinion on how it has changed in the last 3 years, and how do you expect it to change in the next 5 years?
Sure. Yeah. So it is already adding tremendous value, in the sense that with the help of all these insights, these contact centers are able to operate more efficiently, and by that I mean they're able to answer queries faster because they have access to these knowledge bases. They're able to make more sales because they have these real-time cues which tell them how to basically make a pitch, etc.,
Hmm.
etc. Uh, Over time, as these models keep on improving, I would say there could be a future where agents would be doing more high value tasks, and some of the easier tasks which your first call of action would be to actually consult a knowledge base online. You'll try to find an answer there, but you're not able to do that, so you'll go to an agent and take their time. Maybe
Hmm.
these will be automated with the help of these LLMs, and augmented using these knowledge bases through things like RAG. Basically, that's what I see happening.
Fascinating. And uh, did you encounter the issue of hallucination while using GenAI? Like we've heard that's a big problem. And did you encounter that? And yeah, just want to hear your.
Yes. Yeah, we do encounter hallucination. Although there are two things basically. One is that our the set of tasks which we are servicing is like very narrow. We'll have like 15
Hmm.
tasks. So we have the luxury of curating a lot of good training data for these 15 tasks, showing it to the model. This is unlike the situation where I go to ChatGPT, I can ask it anything in the world, anything
Yeah.
under the sun, and I may find one out of 1,000 queries where it gives an absurd answer. So we've already minimized that by restricting to 15 tasks on which we've fine-tuned these models a lot. The second thing is as I mentioned, we have post-processing steps. So QA-GPT, we produce evidence. We claim it's evidence that it's an excerpt from the conversation which supports the answer the model has given.
Hmm.
We'll have post-processing steps like actually searching for the presence of that evidence. It's a simple post-processing step. Basically, check that the evidence the model produced is actually there in the conversation, at, at least
Okay.
agnostic of case or punctuation, etc. At least something should be there. So these sort of checks will help prevent foul evidence, basically, which should not be there.
All right. Interesting. Cool. Uh, that's all from my side, Abhimanyu. It was lovely talking to you. Uh, Thank you so much. Anything from you for our viewers?
No, not really. My pleasure. Great talking to you, and I've been following you guys' story for a long time, and yeah, happy to see you making strides, and it gladdens me to see that uh, you're four co-founders. Is that correct, Abhishek?
Three
Three
co-founders. Yeah.
co-founders. Yeah, it just gladdens me to see that startup journey is tough, and you guys have each other. So it's just great, and all the best to you guys.